you joined OneCats 2021, I think too. And you specifically choose tokenomics as the area of research, and what's the reason for that?
Yeah, I mean it's very under researched. I would say, right? There's not that many, like when new projects. Typically, they have developers, they have certain expertise for the technology, but when it comes to the economic design, there's typically not much knowledge out there, and it's just so much opportunities in the space to do it. And yeah, it also fits very much like my background, right? Because you need knowledge about the math, the game theory, the economics aspects, but then also the data science aspect of like data analytics, getting data, data science, making simulations and all that stuff. And so it was kind of a good fit to where I'm good at. And yeah, these two pieces together, like a very greenfield area to work with, but then also like my background, where I see my main strengths, that was a good fit.
Right, I think like tokens, the perception about tokens and how people see and how people use it have changed vastly over the years, especially after FTX and so the industry seems to go towards more pattern structured format instead of very pneumatic kind of things. So, if possible, can you give a 5-minute explanation of what is tokenomics, anyways? How does it coordinate demand supply and why do we private money?
Yeah, I would say if somebody asked me like, okay, what's tokenomics, I would probably say like it's was the first attempt to describe what protocols are doing with the economic aspects of their protocol design, because you always have the technical aspects like what's the product doing, what can I do with my safe, what I can do with my wallet, what I can do with this DeFi protocol, more on the technical aspects. But then they realized the tokens are such a powerful coordination mechanisms. How to properly do it, they just like try and error, right? And we learned that over the past years, like how powerful tokens can be, what they can unleash, when you all of a sudden do airdrops. Now we learn what happens if you do point programs. Like you don't even give them tokens, you give them points, right? So tokenomics was like this first term to describe it. I would say let's maybe scratch the term, because it has all this like baggage of these pie charts and these vesting schedules, and this is tokenomics, because tokenomics is like really the economic design of the dynamics of your protocol. And this is not something you do pre-token launch, it's not something that you do in your white paper, it's a continuous effort, just like as you do it on the technical side, right? If you build a protocol, you start with some MVP, you build it out, you do the technology, the developers code stuff, testnet, mainnet. You do the very same thing on the economic side, and this is what the token design should be about. That's why I'd rather speak about token design. A16Z calls it tokenology. Mainly everybody, because this tokenomics term has like this loaded baggage of what happened until now. That's why I'm like would say, okay, tokenomics, maybe let's talk about token design, economic design, or something like that.
Is tokenomics necessary to every single project in Web3, or is it a unique feature?
It's not necessary, I would say. It's just a nice feature that you have in Web3 that you don't have in Web2. Right? In Web2, you basically, how can you incentivize users? It's more about like, you have these machine learning algorithms that extract all the data, your interaction to, make you use it. Plus, I mean, traditional economies, they have the points programs, miles programs. There's nothing new. Cashback, Starbucks vouchers, things like that. But now the Web3 tokens is really new because there's something that is on-chain, immutable, like I give to you my token because you did XYZ or as an airdrop whatsoever. I cannot take that away from you anymore because I put it on-chain, right? With the Starbucks vouchers, Starbucks dev can just like go in the database and say like, yeah, this voucher is not valid anymore. And then, you thought you got something or miles on some airlines, but it's not really yours. It's just like a number in a database. and that's, I think, is a powerful tool that protocols can use. They don't need to. Like, nobody needs to have a token. We maybe can go into that, but it's just like a very, very powerful tool to use to your benefit.
So why does the project need a token necessarily?
Different reasons, I guess. It's really, what do you try to achieve with your protocol, right? Are you providing some infrastructure? Are you like in a consumer app, a DeFi app? I think at the core, typically the common denominators are around coordination and you know, a little bit about the value capture and then also the value transfer. These are the points where you say like a token is a very good tool to do that. The caveat is always, well, bringing it back to the tokenomics, token design. How you do it is up to you, and you might have a goal with the token you wanna launch to your protocol, but if you don't do it properly, you know, that might go in a completely different direction. And this is then a little bit it should be a solid decision to say like, yes, we feel like we can really unleash more with our product by adding a token to our protocol. But when you did make this decision, then you also need to focus some attention to it, because a token can also kill your product, basically, just because, you know, the economics, the momentum that it unleashes. Yeah, you know, something that can benefit you can also hurt you. So you need to watch out for that.
I think you, in the past few months, you've gifted very comprehensive token reviews for all the DeepIn projects. And you also summarized a graph of the players and how tokens are used in DeepIn to coordinate labors, resources, whether it's digital or hardware, and how it incorporates with like the end consumers. In that case, I think maybe you need a token, but in other cases, do you think there are different types of tokenomics?
I mean, yes, for sure, right? It's in any case different levels of why you need or not need a token. And even the hardware and deepen projects, right? Typically, the argument for a token is like, yeah, we need to incentivize the supply side. Somebody need to buy an antenna and put it on their rooftop or provide their storage, and they have cost for that. Technically, you could, you know, just say, okay, then we have users that pay in USDC, and you know, we pay in USDC. I mean, you can even say it's fiat, but then, right, you can really live outside the crypto world, like running on crypto rails, like decentralized, but having the payments in fiat directly. However, typically, why is nobody doing this? Because, I mean, this is then a centralized payment channel. So then you really wonder, okay, why do I have decentralized infrastructure when I have centralized payments? You know, then you're back to the Starbucks thing of like, just like, okay, who's in charge here? So that's why it does make sense to, you know, stick to decentralized means of payments, where you can also use stable coins. It doesn't mean you need to use your own token. You can use ETH, you can use the payment tokens out there. However, your own token gives you the additional benefit of like, yeah, you're in control of, you know, the minting, how much you emit, to whom you emit, what you do with it. Again, this is the nice thing of the whole token design. It unleashes so many degrees of freedom, and you can just make any single decision, and you can even change this decision over time. And it's just a very powerful tool to, you know, also grow community, grow momentum, right? And this is probably the most simple thing. Well, it's not simple, but it's one of the simple mechanisms is the governance token, right? Where you just say, okay, the team kicked it off, they get it off the ground, but now we want like a broader community and we want to buy in. So we have basically governance, a token-based governance, and that's why we have this token. But then, of course, you know, there's more and more you can put on top of that.
Right. So for DPs, do they also have a governance layer on top of it, that demand supply, game theory layer? What's kind of, is there a module that every project can take?
Yeah, I mean, right, ideally, you can modularize it. That's the ideal vision, that you say, okay, incentives for the supply is a module, and the governance is a module, and the incentives on the demand side is a module, and then it's just the investment speculation part is a module. At the end of the day, though, well, you only have one token, or you typically start with one token, and then you somehow wonder, okay, that all interrelates. And this is why it makes governance, for example, very interesting for DPINs, because, as we said, one key piece for DPINs, which is probably a little bit different from, for example, consumer or DeFi apps, is like this supply incentivization. They have actual cost, and you want to incentivize them that these costs are covered, or they at least believe like, okay, if I invest in this at one time, I'll be better off. At least this is the rationality that you would expect these node operators put into place to join your protocol. That also means, okay, you need to give them quite a share of your network. But then when you couple it to governance, it really means like, well, if rewards, just a simple example why there is dependencies. So now initially you say, okay, we give this amount to the supply side, and the rest can be decided by governance. Also keep in mind, well, these operators, if they don't sell the token, they accrue more and more share of the voting power, and then you can easily run into the issues of like, then this one group can decide on their own rewards, and then game theory kind of like predicts what's happening, right? Like these guys can just basically take over, and then you are in a network where basically the supply side owns the whole network, which may be something you feel is good. But then you really wonder, okay, what's with all the community, with the guys that build on top, with, typically DPINs is not just about the guy who provides the antenna. They are an important piece, but governance aspects with DPINs is also a lot of like, managing different interest groups, and relying purely on token weight might be a little bit risky, especially when you still need to figure out how these different groups have shares. And that's why there are a lot of protocols, well, not a lot, but prominent protocols like Filecoin or Graph have actually this separate council step in the governance, right? You have token determines proposals and votes, but then there's still like, to put it in action, there's still like a different council, or Pocket, for example, also different. They have a token for the economy, for the staking, for the reward mechanisms. But the governance works on a separate mechanics.
Have you overseen like the historical design evolutions of maybe the tokenomics of Graph and Filecoin? Have they changed over time? How do they change in response to the environment?
The token rewards for sure are pretty much set in stone, right? That was one of the primitives of the early, for sure, the early protocols, right? Because we came from Bitcoin and we learned, oh, it's so powerful as a network effect and also economic promise to know this is the emission schedule, and we put it in this immutable contract so nobody can tinker with it. And a lot of protocols double down on that, right? And Filecoin, for example, also has like then an approach to say like, yeah, this is why we also have this emission schedule. However, Filecoin, for example, also learned, well, that might be a little bit too constraining, so we add a second logic on top, which is still set in stone, but it has at least a more dynamic adjustment, right? This baseline reward mechanism. So I would say from this regard, tokenomics did not change because they put it out, they thought about it, they designed it and put it out. Graph, similarly, they put out the 3% inflation that goes to indexers. However, I think there are always some adjustments. For example, the Graph, don't quote me on that, because I need to look it up again because this is more from memory. They had this curation function, that there's a function, indexer basically just indexes data, but which data should they do? There's curators that could have a bonding curve where they can put out stake. But then over time they learn this creates certain issues or is not getting what they want or is inefficient, and that's what they adjusted. How exactly they adjusted it, I need to look it up again. But I just know that this is one aspect of like, yeah, right. When I always encourage protocols to be, not too much of like the Bitcoin ethos of like, we need to put it at token launch, we need to fix it, and then it stays there forever. This is a very challenging task. You can do it if your token economy is not expected to be too complex, but deepins are complex, and it helps to just be mindful of like, yeah, some components we probably see and learn and adjust. And I mean, frankly, this is what you now see manifesting, for example, in the points. Protocols realized even the token design, this is like such a long process, so much pressure to get it right at start. Let's maybe allow ourselves to run experiments to learn by just handing out points, which obviously from a crypto narrative perspective puts us back to the Starbucks database, right? Somebody can just like delete all your points and there's nothing you can do about it. But still, the benefit is that, yeah, we are so early. This industry is growing so fast. Things are changing. Every other day is some new technology coming out. Like just from a mental exercise to imagining that mass simulations and data science, whatever, can help you getting it right is just not working, I guess. It's just a little bit illusional that this is really possible.
Yeah, I agree that the industry changes super, very Web3 rate. different from,
Yeah.
maybe AI changes faster, but Web3 changes really fast. But it seems that what hasn't really changed is Bitcoin itself. So if you want to compare the new tokenomic design with Bitcoin, what hasn't been changed? Like what's the component that stays constant? And is it because the simple design that's quite anti-fragile with time? And
I think what hasn't changed is the basic idea of, there's still some underlying economic principles that, have been valid for ever since economics discipline has evolved, which is, yes, the token and your own token and the emissions, the incentives that can help spin up kind of like contribution, miners faster than by just like bootstrapping everything yourself with the income you get, right? So the Bitcoin initial emissions way higher than now. What everybody has the idea, and it's similar to protocols now, that eventually, given you have the supply, given your protocol works as intended, very good UX, at one point there is revenue coming in, and then the revenue can fill the gap from your decrease in token rewards. So this is, I think, something that is there and will frankly be always around, that you're like, well, you can kind of like go a little bit into depth by issuing tokens up front, handing out incentives up front, but it's aligned with the future revenue streams that might come in to eventually take over, so that the overall rewards and income for the contributors are not decreasing the way the token rewards go.
I think other protocols other than Bitcoin, there seems to be more complex in some ways. So do you think tokenomics for Web3 protocols will be as composable as smart contract in the future? In those standards, so they withstand time because it's complex. It's not simple theory to be.
Yeah, that's a really tough problem, because that's also the beauty of Bitcoin, right? It's just like, it's put out there, it's a simple mechanism, but it's just there forever. Nobody can do anything about it. And on the other hand, for example, if you look what Ethereum does, right? A very different approach. Yes, there's the Ethereum Foundation. They can actually tinker with the code. They can adjust things. They can implement things. And even there, on the economic side, even proof of stake is something where then ERP 1559 comes into play. People understand. Oh, now we have this builders, searchers. We have these different roles emerging, and then people think about, oh, there's this MEV problem. How do we go about it? Propose a builder separation as the next thing, but then they realized, oh, but actually these guys can still work together and collude and actually get an advantage. So it's always like, that's what I'm saying. It's so hard to do this, and I mean they're biggest brain of our industry working on this problem, right? And still them are like not able to foresee every dynamic, even though in hindsight you're like, well, game theory kind of like predicts this behavior. So long story short, yes, it's complex, and I'm not sure that it will ever get simpler, right? Because the version that's the simplest and most immutable is out there already. You can copy it and implement yourself, but I think nowadays, well, there is a reason why, you know, Ethereum and Deep and all new protocols go rather the more complex route. It's also a more adjustable route, the more like experiment, faster growth route, right? Because this is typically how technology evolves in general, right? It's more like this is one. I'm looking for a good comparison, but maybe, you know, think about bicycles. I mean, bicycles are still around. They have been around for 100 years, even before cars. And yes, you know, at one time they were the fastest thing to get around. And, you know, the design changed in the beginning a little bit, but let's maybe say the basic concept is the same. And that's why you can still use it today. But obviously, if you think about like moving from A to B, it's for sure not the best nowadays, just because people thought about, okay, how do we adjust this? What can we add? Oh, there's something new we add. Oh, now we have the problem of this and that, and add this, add that. So yeah, not sure if this is a good analog, but I just feel like this is the way why token and economic designs for protocols will be more complex. And it's a really good question. How can you still, you know, get into a stage where people can understand what's happening? Because if that goes away, you know, a little bit the trust goes away as well. But then also, how can you keep this kind of like immutable, or like at least the standard of it's the majority of ownership voted to go that route, to make that change, right? It's like, okay, Bitcoin, no change at all, versus like, okay, at least the majority of ownership says like, yeah, we want to do these changes. Versus like, no, some exploiter changed it. And that's the worst case that you want to actually avoid with any token design.
Well, what have you been observed as the very obvious pitfalls for people when they design tokenomics, and it really hurt? It doesn't really help with their growth.
Yeah, it's one piece that you can easily fall for is this perception of you have this candy jar of your token, and you tap into it, and you say like, oh, cool, if I throw this as an airdrop or whatever, people use, I get traction. And then they feel like, oh, cool, similar to kids get addicted to candy, they get addicted to that, not realizing that the more they do it, the more the people also only do it because they get it, right? And that's why we're at the stage now where we discuss all this airdrop farming industry and all these misleading things of like high FTV, low market cap. All these issues are just arising because we kind of like lost a little bit the track of what's the purpose of this candy jar, right? It's not to get fed up with candy. It's more like what I said initially. It's a very powerful tool to coordinate, to grow your economy, to speed up your protocol evolution, but it cannot be a shortcut that at the end of the day, you want to build a product. It's still about the product. Yes, the token eventually becomes a part of your product, but the token becoming the product itself, especially when you just like think like, and then especially initially, right? You feel like, oh, we have this budget, we can spend it. Because eventually, right, you have these vesting schedules. You have also the team, the investors, eventually they also unlock. And this is then when you just realize, oh, we don't have any income that covers that, or we don't have any real usage or paying usage, monetization. We didn't, we spent all this incentives because we are like addicted to the traction and number go up thing, but the bottom line wasn't there. And then this is typically when things collapse quite quickly. On top of it, when you have some market cycles, bull bear, on top of it, that makes things even worse typically. So yeah, this is something to really at least play a little bit through with the teams is also what I do a lot, you know, make some simple simulations of like just the pure mechanics of like, okay, where's the buy pressure coming on, where's the sell pressure coming from? Don't ignore any narrative or whatever on top, just the pure like, do you think these guys will hold the token or will sell the token? How much sell pressure comes in? Why will people have the token? And if then over time there's unlocks happening, how will this result in the price movement? Will you run into problems basically if you front load a lot of incentives, or should you stretch it out? Should you think about some, you know, token sink? I mean, there's typically, right, we talk about token faucets, token sinks and things like that.
Safe, I think they have Safe Pass as their credit, and Safe Token they just launched, I think 1 month ago, half month ago. So what's your basically insight about the design of Safe?
So yeah, Safe, the token itself, I think they launched it over 2 years ago actually, right? This is a pure governance token, non-transferable, and I like the community aspect of it. I actually haven't followed it back then so much. I mean, yeah, disclaimer, right? OneCats is also an investor in Safe, but back then I wasn't with OneCats, and also there wasn't much to do, right? Because it was out there, the governance is working, they set up the governance. Another team member helped actually a lot there, and they had the token, and there was always they had a really good communication and plan around. Okay, eventually we want to make it transferable, or the community can decide it, and here are the 5 steps that need to be fulfilled. And the one was about the token utility, which finally got signed by governance, and now the token is transferable and can be traded. Now, this is one of the parts, right, where, okay, as long as it's not transferable, it's a good governance token, it has the one utility for it, and that frankly could have been enough, right? If this is what you need from a token, this is actually a good design, non-transferable. You distribute it to the people you want to distribute it, and you keep it this way. But the issue on that is then obviously you can't get all the tools and freedoms that you get with the candy bar when it's transferable. But now, you know, community decided to make it transferable, and yeah, it will be interesting to see what they actually come up with. It's as you see, Safe Team General is very community driven. You know, they have this initiative now to say like, okay, how do you think, where should we go with the value capture, right? I think they now started this CowSwap collaboration. I think today they also, I missed the keynote because I was on a separate panel, but they had, I think they talked about fees and monetizing a little bit on the success they have. Over 100 billion in asset under managed, and it's a great product, right? I mean, we invested for a reason. How they can use the token to spin it up. Let's see, they have now a points program as well. The Safe Pass is something that I also see as a trend that more programs will do. I heard about the Deepen Pass, for example, that's in the making by I think Deepen Hub wanted to do that, which is more and more the trend to kind of like counteract a little bit the pure farming aspect of things versus the like, yeah, you know, we want you to use the product because you like the product, but also give the feedback to the product as a user and not as somebody who, like, you know, just wants to make like a quick buck on, you know, doing what we tell him to do. And I really like that direction where this is going.
Yeah, I think Safe, they're incentivizing people to stake Safe tokens. So they give them Safe Pass as a result.
Yeah, exactly, right. This is also another thing. You need to lock it up. But even there, I think it's a little bit different from normal staking, because normal like staking, even VE, you know, curve staking, where like you need to lock it up for 4 years to gain a certain booster, and then it's locked up, right? There's nothing you can do about it. Whereas I think the Safe is more like you lock it, and you can. I think you can anytime lock it up.
Yeah, actually. To their wallets, so they
Yeah.
don't have to incentivize people who use their wallet by transferring money into the wallet.
Right, it's a little bit like it's not like the super hot stake to say like, yeah, stake it for 4 years, otherwise you don't get a boost. More like you lock it up, and the longer you hold it, the more you boost. But whenever you unlock it, well, then obviously you lose some of the benefits. So it's a nicer, more carrot than a stick, I would say, in that sense. And yeah, it's an interesting mechanics. And that's anyway that the stuff which brings me back to the more data analytics side is like really good to make these smaller steps on like especially related to points of like we launched this initiative, how much is the traction, how much did we get, did we achieve what we intended to achieve, okay, if not, what should we adjust, oh, if yes, what can we do next, how can we build on top of that, and things like that. And yeah, will be interesting to follow what they will announce. I mean, they for sure have a large enough ecosystem to go wild, I guess.
Yeah, I think credits are easier to understand. They're more relevant to the product. So like Blur, they encourage you to build NFT, list your own NFT, and they give you points on that. Tokens and more complicated things.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Robert.